today's lecture, I will try to wrap up the basic introduction to network theory concepts with a brief discussion about connected components and network motifs.
Okay, so let us continue with some of the concepts we had left behind in the morning. So, first is what is a connected component. So, connected component is this is a graph with two connected components, basically two pieces. So, within a connected component you have a path between every pair of nodes. Right. So, here there is no path between any node in this group to any node in this group. Right. So, if you add this edge, you now have a single connected component. Right. A very common characteristic of most biological networks is what is called a giant strong component, or in other words a single massively connected component. Right. You will typically find something like 90 to 95% of the nodes are in a single connected component. There might be a few stray nodes here, something like this, you will commonly find it, but majority of the nodes are in like one proper single connected component. Right. So, if you were to now extend this definition to a directed graph, you get what is known as a strongly connected component. Right. So, what is a strongly connected component? This holds for a directed graph right. So, in a directed graph, if you have a path between every pair of nodes in a component in both directions, that is what is a strongly connected component. So, in this graph what would be a strongly connected component? Is it ABC? So, ABC would be a strongly connected component because you have a path from A to B, B to A to C, C to A and B to C, C to B, right. So, this is what is a strongly connected components. There is C to A to B, indirect. So, it is not an edge, it is a path. So, you are not worried about edges here, the existence of a path. Another simple way would be you have a cycle, you automatically have a strongly connected component. You have a path from A to B, B to A, B to C, C to B and so on. Yes. So, that brings us to the definition of what is a cyclic versus an acyclic graph, right. So, this is a graph where there is a cycle. In this graph, well, you have again cycles, smaller cycles. You have an AB cycle and an AC cycle. Right. There is a path from a node to itself, that is the definition of a cyclic graph. So, and sort of the last concept that we wanted to look at, I will just briefly go over it and we will spend a whole class almost a little way down the line, is what is a motif. What is a motif in general? You have heard the word in English, right? It is some sort of a pattern or usually a logo or something like that. So, in that fashion, if you look at a graph like this, you will find that there seem to be a few repeating patterns, right. So, motifs are basically I should probably say it the other way around. They are subgraphs. No, they are over represented subgraphs, or in fact statistically significantly over represented subgraphs. So, can you tell me what is a motif here? No, here in this picture. A triangle, and it also seems to have a particular order, right. So, you have this is actually called a feed forward loop, right. This basically is feeding forward, and you can also call it a coherent feed forward loop, but essentially so there is a link like this, and there is also a link which feeds forward, direct and indirect. So, this is one way, but this is already feeding forward to that point. So, A is already feeding forward to C. You can have a feedback, that is like a more classic thing. So, you have something like this or through another node and so on. There are many different kinds of motifs. We will look at it at a little later stage.
What is meant by statistically significant?
What is meant by statistically significant? That is quite interesting. We will have to, I think, wait. So, anytime you use the word statistically significant, it means that you need to have a null model in the first place. You need to expect something. Right. So, to quickly answer your question, if you take a dice and throw it 10 times and you find 6 or like 8 times you find 6. So, 6 is statistically over represented there, because you expect 6 much fewer times. You expect 6 about twice almost, once or twice, and if you get it 6 times, it is statistically over represented. Right, which means that is because you have a basal expectation. You have an expectation of what is the outcome initially based on a fair dice or a null model, right. So, what is the null model for this? We will look at it when we look at motifs.
So, should all strongly connected components be cyclic because there is a path from a node to itself?
So, it does not need to have a path from a node to itself, no, in a strongly connected component. It only needs to have a path from A to B.
Yeah, but
So,
then there should be a B to A.
Probably, I guess, but I have to, there may be an exception, but it does seem so.
If you have just A, B, C and both arrows in both the edges, then it's not cyclic.
No, it is technically cyclic, right. So, that is the example we already saw here. So, this is cyclic. It has,
The first one,
yeah. So, there are 2 cycles.
AC and AB. Oh, like that.
Yeah, so there is a path from A to itself. Well, I need to just make sure that this is called a cycle, and if there is a slight
Loop is a cycle. This is a loop. So it is a
well, this is not a loop, right? I mean, this is okay. You could call it a loop. This would be a self loop, whereas that is a.
I hope you had a good introduction to connected components and network motifs today, and in the next video we will try to review all of the network concepts that we have covered so far and set the tone for further topics.